So I'm speaking with,
John Vlastelica of Recruiting Toolbox.
and John, you work with a lot of companies teaching them how to, well, interview, and you're telling me that you're training essentially hiring managers to do something else as well. What is that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. In the last couple of years, especially smaller companies are finding that they don't have the recruiting resources to reach out and do all the sourcing that they need to do. One of the things we've been doing recently, in addition to hiring manager training around interviewing, is teaching hiring managers how to leverage their networks, how to source. I was doing a session today actually here in the Bay Area, and it was very interesting because a lot of managers aren't familiar with the term sourcing. I talked about it, and because of social networks, because of sites like LinkedIn, because of things you can do on Dice, because of things you can do with connections you have kind of outside of work, it's a lot easier for hiring managers to source candidates. So we spent time talking about how they can solicit referrals, how they can optimize their presence online, how they can make themselves easier to be found, and also how they can reach out and find other folks.
Let's get into that. How can you be found? Because I hear this problem all the time. Let's dig into that. Maybe you can just tell me some tips. What are some techniques to increase your discoverability?
Some of the things that we talk about with managers is making sure that they've got complete profiles wherever they hang out online. So a lot of savvy candidates, when they hear about an opening at a company, they're going to go online and see if they're connected to someone that works there. A lot of managers don't do a very good job of keeping their profiles up to date. So one of the things we talk about is how can you make yourself both easier to find, in other words, load your profile with keywords that candidates are likely to search for. If you're called, a senior PM3 at your company, spell that out. What does that mean? Make it obvious. Identify yourself, if you're a technology person, by the technologies you work with. Identify yourself by more common department names. And then when they find your profile, talk a little bit about what it's like to work there. Talk about the kind of jobs you're recruiting for. Talk about the fact that you're open to a connection. Make it easier for people to connect with you.
Let me step back a little bit. You said the primary reason you were here was to teach better interviewing skills. So let me ask, what is the most common mistake companies or essentially recruiters are making when they're interviewing?
I think one of the most common mistakes hiring managers make in particular is they focus too much on technical skills and not enough on the other things. When we talk with savvy technology leaders, savvy hiring managers, even HR people, and we say, why do people fail? Why do you end up firing people? They don't talk about technical skills. What they talk about are some of those other things like adaptability, humility. They talk about communication skills, general problem solving skills. But a lot of companies lately are talking about the requiredness to kind of be more flexible, to have that kind of adaptability kind of thing. And they don't really dig into that. Or if they do, they kind of do the tell me about a time when you were flexible. The way we recommend people evaluate something like flexibility is to give them a technical question. If they're a technology person, give them a technical question and ask them to go to the whiteboard, start working on the problem, then introduce constraints in the problem like you'd experience in the real world. Maybe you have to shorten the timeline from 90 days to 60 days and watch them in action flex. Watch them adapt real time in a real problem situation. A lot of managers think they have to do an HR interview and ask questions that sound like HR questions. Really, they want the same information, and they can actually get it by just asking a lot of their technical questions in a different way.
I hear all the time about the importance of a good culture fit. Are they fitting into the culture? How do you interview for that?
A lot of that is taking a look at what are the common denominator characteristics of your most successful employees and really articulating what those things are. A lot of companies say fit, and they don't know what that means. I do a lot of work helping companies from Groupon to Eddie Bauer to the World Bank think about what do we mean by culture fit. And there's some things that are going to be very unique to your company, and there's some things that are fairly common. It's really important that you and the executive team and the HR leaders are aligned on what we mean by that. And so for a lot of companies, things like fit have to do with the way you make decisions as a company. So one of the clients I was working with last week was Dolby Labs. They're a very consensus-oriented culture. Someone that comes in that's kind of too directive, too top-down, too autocratic, is not going to like it there, and they're going to be rejected by the corporate immune system, if you will. Other companies are very much kind of more aggressive. There's some Bay Area tech companies that are very, very aggressive. Some companies, I used to work at Amazon, I was there for 6 years, very aggressive. It's less consensus-oriented, really smart people, just a different style. And you really need to know what that is for your company and then evaluate against that. Be really specific around what that looks like.